When it comes to guitar tone, Hendrix is untouchable. He was a true pioneer whose sound is still relevant in music culture today. Known for his iconic Fender Stratocaster and towering Marshall stacks, his sound was distinctive yet dominating. But here's a take that might upset a few Fender lovers. What if Hendrix sounded better on a Gibson Les Paul? Imagine that same feel and phrasing, but with the heavier and more punchier sound of a Les Paul. It would have more power, more sustain, and maybe be a better tone. As a proud Gibson fanboy, I've been thinking about this a lot, so today I just had to try it. So in today's SPG video, I'm chasing the Hendrix tone, but with a Gibson Les Paul.
What?
So Strat purists, you might want to look away now. Let's get into it. Hello guitarists, welcome back to Squealing Pig Guitars, the home of luxury shred machines here in Nottingham, England. My name is Keightley, and today we have a fun hypothetical style episode for you. In today's episode, we're going to be questioning whether Jimi Hendrix would have sounded better with a Gibson Les Paul. This is going to be a tone hunting adventure, and we're actually going to be comparing it with the original Fender Stratocaster. In today's episode, I'm going to be covering 3 different songs from Hendrix's register. Number 1, we'll be trying to cover Little Wing, a beautiful arrangement which I've loved for many years. Number 2, Voodoo Child, so we'll be getting the wire out for that one. And number 3, Purple Haze. And the whole point of today's video is to answer the question whether Hendrix would have sounded better with a Gibson Les Paul. So let's not dawdle any further, let's introduce the setup that we'll be using for today's video. So guitarists, for the first part of this video, I'm going to be chatting about the setup I'll be using for these 2 guitars. Of course, we're going to be shooting out the Fender Stratocaster versus the Gibson Les Paul for the ultimate Hendrix tone. So of course, if I'm playing Hendrix, I need a plexi style tone that's going to get that nice kind of, saturated distortion from the amplifier itself and then boost it with a fuzz pedal or a wah-wah pedal. So I thought the perfect choice would be this Friedman vintage head, which obviously looks exactly like a plexi. You have all the controls of a plexi as well, but we actually have this kind of variable volume, which is really useful for getting them saturated tones without going too loud in the room. I'm putting the guitar into the low input and I've got both volumes on about 2. I've pretty much got all the EQ at noon, as I think all Marshall style amplifiers sound the best that way, and I've backed off the presence a little bit just so we don't get too much of that kind of high-end squeal. This amp on its own already sounds incredible, and for Little Wing, I'm just going straight into this amplifier and adding a little bit of reverb in post. So now we're on the floor to show you the pedals that I'll be using in today's episode. This is my floorboard that I use for every single one of the Squealing Pig Guitars demos. This board was made by AJB Pedal Boards. They sent it over for free, which is very kind of them, so make sure to check out their Instagram. Again, not a sponsored post, but they did provide this pedal board for us here at the studio. This is the Renato fuzz that I'm going to be using in today's episode. This is a great Italian fuzz, handmade, obviously trying to replicate that fuzz face. They're a very cool brand, make sure to check them out. And for today's episode, all I'm going to be using is this fuzz face and this pedal here, which is the JHS Gain Stage 424. I typically use these through the Mesa Boogie when I'm doing my ambient section, but obviously the Friedman does not have an effects loop, so we won't be using these today. All the reverb you're hearing is from GarageBand in post.
Now let's check out the guitars. We'll start with the Strat, as that's going to be our reference for the original Hendrix tones.
So our Strat for today is a 2010 Knuckle Fender Custom Shop Strat. I've never seen one of these before, but apparently it was a collaboration with Bare Knuckle Pickups. This actually has the Bare Knuckle Pickup set in this one. Obviously it's a 60s style Strat, very similar to what Hendrix would have played. Obviously it looks a little bit more like a Stevie Ray Vaughan guitar, but it'll be a great reference point for the original tones in today's episode. Now let's introduce the Gibson Les Paul that we'll be using today. And this is the Les Paul that we're using in today's episode. Yes, it's the original Greenie. We've had this on the channel a few times, but I thought I'd bring it back today because obviously it's a very special Les Paul, but the main reason is because we're going to get that out of phase tone in the middle, which I think would be perfect for Little Wing. You guys know about this guitar. It's obviously a 59 Les Paul reissue. We've got some cool features like the Spursel tuners, obviously the collector's choice relicking on this one, and of course we've got the nice kind of PAF style pickups. Of course, today's video is a little bit of fun. We're just trying to see if some of them classic Hendrix riffs would sound better with a Les Paul or with the Stratocaster. I think these types of debates are so fun to talk about, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. But now that we've checked out the guitars, let's get into the songs. So the first song that we're trying to cover today is Little Wing, which obviously is a very complex, clean arrangement. Being covered by loads of musicians, I personally prefer the Stevie Ray Vaughan version. Of course, the Hendrix version is a very clean sound, a little bit of reverb, and it's using that kind of 4th position on a Stratocaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the guitar straight into the amplifier, no pedals, and then just add a little bit of reverb in post. So let's see how that sounds on the Stratocaster. So this is what it sounds like on the classic Fender Stratocaster. Now let's see what it sounds like on the Les Paul. So the middle tone of this guitar has a very nasally out of phase tone, and although it's not replicating what a Stratocaster sounds like per se, it gets fairly close to that tone but with a little bit more bass end. However, I actually think the neck pickup of this guitar will sound better for Little Wing, so let me do it one more time just to show you, but I'm loving the feel of this guitar, and I can tell that I'm finding it a little bit easier to play, and it sounds really good going through the Freeman. So let's hear on the neck pickup and see if we get any better of a tone. So it's definitely growing on me. I think the neck pickup of the Les Paul has a really nice dark tone. And of course, it sounds nothing like Hendrix other than obviously the tune, because the Les Paul is so much more of a throaty and bass heavy model. But this is the beauty of music, is trying to use different guitars for different songs. And as a result, you'll pick up different tones and put your own fingerprint on the music. So at the end of the first test, I'm going to give the point to the Fender Stratocaster. I think it sounds better on Little Wing, mainly because it's more jangly. But I did enjoy the bass end of the Les Paul, but it's a little bit too flubby for Little Wing. But as we work our way through this video, I think the Gibson Les Paul will come into its own when we start using overdrive and fuzz pedals. But now let's go to song number 2, which is Voodoo Child. For Voodoo Child, the amplifier stays the exact same. We're not changing a thing on this amplifier. The only thing I'm adding to the start of the song is, of course, a wah-wah pedal. This is a Vox V847 made in USA wah. This is actually a vintage one. It comes in a really cool bag, which I'll put a video on screen now of. We bought this a couple of weeks ago to try and simulate this tone, and I have to say it does an incredible job. And then when we get into the fuzzy riffing section, I'm going to engage the Renato Silicon Fuzz. The Silicon Fuzz has that really spitty fuzz, which always sounds incredible going into a Marshall-style amplifier. So I'm going to use that on its own with a lot of volume and a lot of fuzz coming out the pedal, and I'm going to boost it with the JHS Gain Stage 424. So let's see what the Stratocaster sounds like on the Voodoo Child. So this is Voodoo Child the way it was meant to be on a Stratocaster. Wow, that's going to be hard to beat. Let's see what it sounds like on the Les Paul. that sounds insane. I'm going to be biased here, but you can't beat the sound of a Gibson Les Paul with a fuzz pedal on, especially going into a Marshall-style amplifier. And this is why I did this demo today, this is why I'm doing this video. In my opinion, the Gibson Les Paul is the ultimate riffing guitar. You just get that lovely, ballsy sustain with that. And although I think the clean sound, again, sounded better on the Fender Stratocaster, as soon as I engaged the Renato fuzz and played that bend on the 10th fret, I knew it was going to sound incredible. And yet, it probably doesn't sound like Hendrix. Again, that's not entirely the purpose of today's video, not trying to replicate his sound. And of course, this is a hypothetical situation where we imagine what would Hendrix sound like with a Gibson Les Paul. And in my opinion, for that section, a Gibson Les Paul would have sounded 10 times better. It's just got so much more sustain. I honestly believe if Hendrix was alive longer, he would have explored different options with different guitars. We already know that he played a Gibson V at one point in time and a Gibson SG, so he's already exploring the possibilities of playing with different instruments. But you know, the likelihood of him picking up a Gibson Les Paul over the next 2-3 decades was probably very likely, especially with the boom with the burst later on in history. So it would have been very interesting to see what he would have sounded like on a Les Paul. Of course, so many famous guitar players will go between a Stratocaster and a Les Paul. Think about Jeff Beck. His playing style sounds unique on a Strat and it sounds incredible, but he also sounds incredible on a Les Paul. It just brings a different side of each player out. And in conclusion of the second song, I'm gonna give it to the Gibson Les Paul. I think this Les Paul sounds better on Voodoo Child. Yes, I just said it. Strat lovers, you can hate on me in the comment section below. Now let's move to the third song, which is Purple Haze. And for the final song today, Purple Haze, again, I'm using the same amplifier settings, I'm using the same fuzz settings, and I'm using the gain stage 424, but no wah in this section, so let's hear it. Let's see what it sounds like on the original Fender Strat. So that was Purple Haze, the last song of today's episode. I'm going to reveal my final result in the conclusion of this video, so make sure to stay tuned for then. But I have to say, both guitars sounded awesome, but one just edged it for me. So let me put the guitars down and let's reveal the winner of today's episode. So guitarists, it's the end of another Squealing Pig Guitars video, and it's time to conclude this episode. I'm just going to share a few of my opinions from the experiment that we did today, and of course conclude who is the winner from this episode. So in my opinion, the winner is the Gibson Les Paul. It's not the winner for replicating the Hendrix tone. Of course, the Fender Stratocaster is always going to get closer. For me though, I prefer the mid-range punch and the sustain that it gave on the Voodoo Child fuzz section and the Purple Haze fuzz section. For me, the lead line sounded 10 times better than the Stratocaster. Where the Fender Stratocaster comes into its own is with Little Wing and the cleaner section in Voodoo Child. The cleaner sound always sounds better on a Strat in my opinion, especially going into a plexi amplifier like we had today. And really, Little Wing sounded alright on the Les Paul, but it is more iconic on the Stratocaster. And I think this brings up a conversation which I think is very necessary in today's market. There's a big trend amongst guitar players of us chasing tones from artists we like, whether that's John Mayer, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix. We want to have the exact gear that they have and try and replicate it. But I think I've learned a lesson from today's episode that you can play different instruments for different music. You know, use a Jackson guitar for some clean stuff, use a 335 for heavier stuff, explore with different tones because you never know what you might find. Today I found out that Purple Haze and Voodoo Child sound incredible with a Les Paul, and maybe if Hendrix was still alive, he would have experimented with different guitar models as they came out. With Hendrix being such an experimental guitar player, it's almost certain that he would have picked up different guitar models in his playing life. Obviously, we know he played the Flying V and the SG that Gibson released, but maybe he would have gone into Les Pauls with the boom of the Les Paul later on in the next couple of decades. So that's my take from today's video. I think the clean tones sounded better on the Fender Strat, but the fuzz tones and the lead tones sounded way better on the Gibson. Also, this is my first time playing through that Friedman amplifier, and I have to say that plexi tone is incredible in the room. You can get that beautiful chewy, crunchy tone, but at a low volume, which is really nice to see. But I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you prefer the original Fender Stratocaster? Obviously it's going to sound more like Hendrix, or do you prefer that more overdriven, sustainy tone of the Gibson Les Paul? Let me know down below. Let's have a debate. I love hearing about your guys' opinions down below, so make sure to comment them if you have an opinion. If you've enjoyed today's video and you'd like to see more hypothetical videos, hit that thumbs up button and hit the hype points button if you'd like to support the channel. And finally, if you're new to Squealing Pig Guitars, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers and we could definitely do with your help, so make sure to hit that big red subscribe button if you haven't already. But that is the end of this Squealing Pig Guitars video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very shortly. But until then, keep rocking, guys. I'll see you soon.